It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Breaking news this evening, the jury in the Sean Diddy Combs federal criminal trial has reached a partial verdict tonight. We will have all the latest from outside the court.
The eyes to the right, 335. The nose to the left, 260.
Also on the programme, the Prime Minister gets his controversial welfare bill through the Commons after more last-minute concessions. But at what cost to his authority and to the public finances?
So it is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill today. Constituents will never forgive, and it will haunt those MPs who voted for it.
3 former members of staff are arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter at the hospital where Lucy Letby killed 7 babies. President Trump visits the immigration detention centre dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, even as he clashes again with Elon Musk over his flagship tax bill.
Those is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies.
More than 20,000 illegal immigrants have crossed the Channel so far this year, setting a new record high. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. So let's start then with that breaking news tonight. And the jury in the Sean Diddy Combs trial in New York has now reached a partial verdict. Let's bring in our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, who is at the courthouse in New York. He faces then 5 counts, Martha. 4, the jury said they can agree on. 1, the most important, they cannot.
Yeah, this racketeering charge, Anna, is the most serious charge that Sean Diddy Combs faces. The jury sent a note not long ago to the judge saying they had reached a verdict in 4 of 5 of the charges, but not this racketeering charge. The judge now is considering what both sides, both the prosecution lawyers and the defence lawyers, the lawyers that are working for Sean Combs, are saying as to whether he will accept a partial verdict from this jury. But certainly a moment of incredibly high drama inside that courtroom as the note was read out. Sean Combs had his head in his hands. In the last few moments, his family, 6 of his 7 children, and his mother Janice, who have been there to support him through almost the entirety of the trial, they've re-entered the courtroom. Sean Combs turned round to them, gave them a thumbs up and made a praying gesture. It is very possible that in the coming minutes or hours, Sean Combs will learn whether he is possibly going to spend the rest of his life in prison, because even if the judge does accept a partial verdict on 4 of 5 of these criminal charges, Sean Combs could face the rest of his life in prison, because this jury has reached a verdict on the sex trafficking criminal counts. Those are incredibly serious criminal charges. This is the allegation that he used his power and wealth to manipulate 2 women who he was in relationships with into participating in sexual acts by force, fraud and cohesion. Much of this case centred on the testimony given by Cassandra Cassie Ventura. She was among the first witnesses that the government called. She was in a relationship with Sean Combs for just over 10 years until 2018. She met him when she was still a teenager. She said their relationship started out like all normal relationships. She was head over heels in love with him, but then very soon he introduced her to the concept of freak-offs, and it's these freak-offs that have been central to this trial. They're the name that Sean Combs gave to sex marathons where allegedly he would force Cassie Ventura and another woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane, force them to have sex with a string of male escorts against their will, sometimes demanding that they take ecstasy in order to stay awake for hours and hours on end, sometimes days on end. Cassie Ventura said that these sex marathons were so physically punishing that on occasion the participants would have to have IV drips in order to recover from them. So I think you get a sense, Anna, of just how disturbing the 7 weeks of testimony has been that this jury and Sean Combs's family and the family of his alleged victims have had to sit through. They've been shown videos, not only of those freak-offs, graphic sexual videos that were submitted to the court as sealed evidence, but also videos which appeared to, or a video which appeared to show him violently beating Cassandra Ventura in a hotel corridor.
So what has the defence argument been? Certainly one of the defence lawyers said last Friday that freak-offs were effectively date nights with beautiful music. He claimed there was a nice quality to the so-called freak-offs. They're not aggressive. The physical intimacy is not aggressive. It's very standard, very typical homemade porn. Diddy is not the only man in America making homemade porn, the defence lawyer said. I'm under the impression this is a pretty popular thing these days. So the argument is that the events in these freak-offs was consensual.
Yeah, in his closing statement, Anna, Sean Diddy Combs's lead defence lawyer was almost sneering in his tone. He essentially laughed off the claims that these women are making. He said that the government's case was grossly exaggerated, and he characterised Cassie Ventura, the key witness, as I say, as being a beautiful woman, in his words, who actually enjoyed sex. He said that the relationships, the sexual relationships, were consensual. While the defence case only lasted 25 minutes in comparison to the prosecution case, which lasted 28 days, much of the defence case centred around the cross-examination of these witnesses. They entered into evidence lengthy text exchanges which seemed to show a level of excitement that Cassie Ventura and the other woman central to this case, who testified under the pseudonym Jane, these text exchanges suggesting that they found excitement in these freak-offs, that these were, yes, perhaps unconventional sexual relationships, but they were definitely consensual. So it was almost laughing off the claims of those women. Mark Agnafilo, who delivered that closing statement, he said that Cassie Ventura was a gangster. He said that she was just in this for the money. He said the same of Jane, the other woman who testified. And they brought up the fact that Sean Combs, has now settled many of these civil suits out of court, suggesting that perhaps these victims have come out of the woodwork in order to seek financial gain.
Martha, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. So the news then from the jurors: we are unable to reach a verdict on count one, as we have jurors with unpersuadable views, is the way they put it. Count one is the racketeering conspiracy. As Martha was explaining, Sean Diddy Combs's family, or many of them, have arrived in court. As they entered the courtroom, Sean Combs put his hands in prayer and gave them a thumbs up. The jurors, of course, out considering these charges since yesterday. They've been deliberating for about 12 to 13 hours in total, and the judge has outlined various options to both defence and prosecution. He wants them, I think, to keep deliberating, suggesting that as they've been deliberating for less than 2 days, he doesn't think they've reached the stage where they would accept a partial verdict. So counts 2, 3, 4 and 5, the jury has agreed upon, but not this count one, the racketeering conspiracy. We will return to Martha once we know how that courtroom is proceeding. In the meantime, our other main story tonight: the Prime Minister tonight winning a crucial parliamentary vote on his flagship bill to deliver reforms to the welfare system. Well, the victory came after more last-minute concessions to Labour MPs, which ultimately shrunk the backbench rebellion, which had at one point looked set to scupper the legislation completely. But the win in the Commons comes with a blow to Keir Starmer's political and moral authority, and with a significant cost that could leave the Chancellor facing an additional £5 billion black hole in the public finances. Let's get the latest then. Here's our political editor, Beth Rigby.
Protests over welfare cuts from outside the Commons and within. A row that's run for weeks, now the moment of reckoning.
The ayes to the right, 335. The noes to the left, 260.
Audible gasps as the PM sees off a massive rebellion.
So the ayes have it, unlock.
But only after a massive climb down on welfare cuts to save his own skin.
I wish we had got to this point in a different way, and there are absolutely lessons to learn. But I think it's really important we've passed this bill for second reading. It puts in place some really important reforms to the welfare system.
The bill going through, but a real mess left behind.
Well, I've never seen anything like it in politics, a bill literally disintegrating before our eyes. And I think it comes back to that crucial issue about engagement.
What's your reaction to what's gone on over not just the past 24 hours, but the past few days?
If I'm honest, Beth, I'm absolutely devastated. As I said in the chamber, it's probably the most unedifying spectacle I've ever seen. I've never known a government to make up policy on the hoof at the dispatch box 90 minutes before a debate actually concludes.
Are you happy to send 150,000 people to poverty?
Earlier in the day, the Cabinet signed off watered-down welfare changes.
The rebellion under control.
Approving a revised plan that would see those already on disability payments protected from changes to make it harder to qualify for support. They will also keep their extra universal credit payments.
Thank you.
These changes forced by over 120 Labour rebels. The Work and Pensions Secretary came to the Commons appealing for compromise.
Welfare reform, let's be honest, is never easy, perhaps especially for Labour governments. Our social security system directly touches the lives of millions of people, and it is something we all care deeply about. We have listened to the concerns that have been raised to help us get these changes right.
The Tories seizing on a government on the ropes.
Rather than the fundamental reforms which we so badly need, we have been presented with a botched package of changes, watered down and carved apart in the face of backbench pressure. There is no way we can back this.
And dozens of Labour MPs agreed with her.
It is with a heavy, broken heart that I will be voting against this bill. It will haunt those MPs who voted for it. I, of all people, should know.
It makes a further mockery of a process that will result in hundreds of thousands of people being pushed into poverty.
As the day and debate went on, it was becoming clearer the diluted plan still not enough. The PM and his deputy in there, locked in talks with rebels. And at the 11th hour, another major concession. The government delaying its plan to make it harder for new claimants to receive disability payments until at least the end of next year. Big disability benefit change then delayed, but the government does think that on the broad aspect of welfare reform, there is some public sympathy for gripping it.
If you don't keep a lid on costs like this, you know, it could easily spiral out of control.
Too many people is claiming things that they shouldn't be claiming. A lot of people should be out working.
I think the welfare budget, as in terms of those that perhaps are on benefits, for me, should be more means tested and smaller.
This is an almighty mess. The Prime Minister might have won the vote, but he has lost so much more. He's lost the argument when it comes to his welfare reform, having to U-turn on all the main measures in order to avoid a devastating defeat. And the fiscal fallout of this, well, that's going to be huge. He's had to shelve plans to save billions in welfare spending, and that will leave the Chancellor with a big black hole going into the budget. So look out for talk about tax rises. But even worse than that, he's lost so much politically. He's lost credibility. His authority is shot with an emboldened party, and his allies admit that it's now going to be much harder for him to govern. Keir Starmer swept into Downing Street on a pledge to put the country first. But a year in, he finds himself pinned back by his own party. And if he can't change their minds, how can he change the country?
Well, Beth joins me live now. So a win then for the Prime Minister, Beth, but at what cost?
Well, Anna, that is the big question tonight, and that's what we're going to be asking ourselves, I think, for days and weeks to come. And I think it is far from clear, but I do think what is clear is that there is going to be a lot of fallout from this, and it will roll on in the next weeks and months. But I think it's worth quickly just recapping how on earth did we get here? I mean, this was a Prime Minister today holed up in the House of Commons, literally changing the legislation before MPs' eyes in order to avoid this really embarrassing defeat. And to use a sort of battle analogy, a lot of blood has been spilt today for very little reward for the Prime Minister, because he basically had to completely climb down and authorise that climb down in order just to get this bill passed and not have to face this defeat. So he won, but it is a Pyrrhic victory. And what is the cost? Look, there's so many reverberations. Point one, I think this is really important. The government were trying to save billions from the welfare bill, from pushing through disability changes. And tonight, I can tell you, the Chancellor will now have to find perhaps another $5 billion in savings in order to plug the gap, because she's not going to be getting these planned savings from these welfare cuts now postponed. And I have to say, I saw a number of stony-faced ministers coming out of the chamber when I was in Central Lobby earlier today. That is a massive headache, and there will be questions about tax rises, spending cuts elsewhere. I think the other thing is party management. This is a Prime Minister where the MPs are now emboldened. They think they can bounce him. Even when I was interviewing MPs after, you had Rachel Maskell saying, well, maybe we should have wealth taxes and we shouldn't have more cuts and the Chancellor should raise more tax. You had another MP, Debbie Abraham, saying to me, well, the Chancellor's fiscal rules aren't written in stone, they're not natural law. Perhaps she could look at those again. So what you're seeing now is MPs realising that they have beaten the Prime Minister and they are flexing. I think there's a broader question about his credibility. He made this a flagship policy. He made this a key set of reforms. He said he was going to stand his ground. He's now backtracked on that. So where does that leave him, sort of in the eyes, not just of his party, but the country? There's been a U-turn on welfare. There's been the U-turn on winter fuel allowance. And it takes me back to right at the beginning of this premiership, when the Prime Minister used to say he'd had enough of sticking plaster politics. He was going to take difficult decisions to fix the country. But if ripping up your bill just before the vote isn't sticking plaster politics just to get through the day, I don't know what is. And so I think there's bigger questions here about his authority, his ability to lead, and also his ability to really change the country, because that is, after all, what he promised voters back last year when he won that election.
A day of real significance. Beth Rigby, thank you very much indeed for your analysis there. And if you do want to know how your MP voted, then you can find out using this QR code on your screen now. But let's return then to New York, to the courthouse, the case, the trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs. The jurors have received or decided on 4 out of 5 of the counts against him, not count 1. The judge has been weighing up how to proceed. Let's return then to our US correspondent, Martha Kellner, at the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, speaking to prosecutors and defence lawyers. What's been decided then, Martha?
Yeah, the judge in this case, Anna, Arun Subramaniam, he has decided that he will not at this time accept a partial verdict from this jury. He's just in the last few moments brought the jury back into the courtroom. He said, I ask that you keep deliberating and I remind you of the instructions I gave you yesterday. You shouldn't hesitate, he said, to change an opinion when convinced, to weigh your opinion dispassionately and follow my instructions on the law. Your verdict, he reminded these 8 men and 4 women of the jury, must be unanimous. Each of you, he said, must make your own decision based on consideration of the evidence and discussion with fellow jurors. So he sent them back into the jury room. It is now 20 minutes past 5 p.m. local time. Yesterday, the jury finished their deliberations at around 5 p.m. So there's every chance that they may choose to go home now and return tomorrow. But the headline news in this case is that at the moment the judge is not prepared to accept a partial verdict from this jury. So they will continue their deliberations for now.
And just quickly, Martha, remind us about that count 1 that the jury cannot decide upon.
Yeah, this is the racketeering count, Anna. It's the most serious of the criminal charges that Sean Combs faces. It's most typically applied to multi-person crime organisations like the mafia. It was introduced so that the government can bring down the head honchos in these organisations as opposed to the ordinary foot soldiers in order to convict on that racketeering charge. The jury must be convinced that Sean Combs ran a criminal enterprise. So not that he just had an ordinary celebrity entourage, but that he used his network of employees, so his bodyguards, his personal assistants, and so on, to cover up this series of alleged crimes, that he used them, for instance, to distribute drugs, to bribe, and to coerce these women into having sexual relations against their wishes.
A bit of update that the judge says we've received a note from the jury. They are completing their deliberations for the day and they will return tomorrow at 9 a.m, saying that they've deliberated for 13 hours so far. The jury is coming back into the courtroom, the judge speaking to them. So it does appear this continues into another day and there is a delay for Sean Diddy Combs, Martha, surrounded by his lawyers and his family, awaiting his fate.
Yeah, 6 of his 7 children, Anna, and his mother, Janice, have been in court throughout almost the entirety of this trial. Every morning they pull up outside this courthouse all together in a big black people carrier. They go inside this courtroom and over the past 7 weeks, 28 days the prosecution case lasted, they've heard some incredibly disturbing testimony about their father and their son in the case of his mother, Janice. So, you know, they'll be feeling, I'm sure, incredibly emotional at the moment. Sean Combs certainly is. When he received, or when the judge read out the notes from the jury that they'd reached a partial verdict on 4 of 5 of these charges, he had his head in his hands, clearly very emotional. When his family came into the courtroom, he looked back at them, he made a sign as if he were saying a prayer. He gave them a big thumbs up, and he's been talking to them during recesses in this trial throughout. In fact, when his mum came into court today, he complimented her on her outfit. And when the jury was sent out to begin its deliberations yesterday, they all joined, his family and him joined together in a prayer. They then all clapped. They know that the stakes of this trial, of this verdict, could not be higher for Sean Combs. He faces the very real possibility of a lengthy prison spell, because even if this jury is not able to reach a verdict on the racketeering charge, which carries a tariff of possible life imprisonment, even the sex trafficking charges, which they have been able, they say, to reach a verdict on, if found guilty, that could also mean he spends the rest of his life in prison. And what a fall from grace it has been for a man who became almost the most powerful figure in worldwide R&B and hip-hop music. He really did build his own brand in a way that no producer of music ever had done before. He had fame and money on an unimaginable scale. All of that could be about to come crashing down.
Martha, thank you very much indeed. So the court in the building behind you is now adjourned. The judge has thanked the jurors for all their hard work. They've reached conclusions on 4 out of 5 of the charges against Sean Diddy Combs. He has directed them to go straight to the jury room at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Keep an open mind, he said, as you continue your deliberations. They would clearly like them to decide count 1, which is the racketeering conspiracy against the hip-hop mogul. More coverage, of course, as that continues. Now, police say they have arrested 3 members of the senior leadership team at the hospital where nurse Lucy Letby murdered 7 babies. The 3 who occupied senior positions at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016 have been questioned on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter and released on bail. Investigations are ongoing along with a corporate manslaughter inquiry at the hospital. 35-year-old Lucy Letby is serving 15 whole life orders after she was convicted of murdering 7 infants and attempting to murder 7 others between June 2015 and June 2016. Punk band Bob Vylan claim they're being targeted for speaking up as a police investigation gets underway into chants labelled anti-Semitic during their performance at Glastonbury. The duo deny they support the death of Jews, Arabs or any other race group, but that they support dismantling Israel's military machine. The BBC has expressed regret for failing to cut the broadcast of the rapper's set. The family of a 7-year-old girl killed when a tree collapsed in a park in Essex on Saturday has described her as a shining star. In a statement shared by police, Leona Ruka's family said she was an intelligent and curious soul full of energy and creativity. Leona, who came from Dagenham, was playing in Chalkwell Park in Southend when the accident happened. A 28-year-old man has been charged with the murder of pregnant mother of 2, Sarah Montgomery. The 27-year-old was found dead inside her home in Donegal in Northern Ireland on Saturday. The man will also face a charge of child destruction when he appears in court tomorrow. The UK has recorded its hottest day of the year so far, with temperatures reaching 34.7 degrees in central London. The heat is widespread across Europe, with 2 deaths recorded in Italy and wildfires causing mass evacuations in parts of Turkey. Now, Donald Trump's tax cut and spending bill, which he calls the One Big Beautiful Bill, has passed the US Senate by the narrowest possible margin after a turbulent all-night session. In the end, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, had to break a 50-50 tie to push it through. The independent budget watchdog has forecast the bill will add more than $3 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. Well, the bill has sparked a new fallout between Mr. Trump and Elon Musk, who's described the bill as utterly insane and destructive. Asked today if he would consider deporting Elon Musk, President Trump paused, then said this.
I don't know. I think we'll have to take a look. We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible? He gets a lot of subsidies, Peter. But Elon's very upset that the EV mandate is going to be terminated. And you know what? When you look at it, not everybody wants an electric car.
Our US correspondent David Blevins joins us from Washington. The big, beautiful bill might have passed the Senate, but goodness me, it's kicked off that angry row between Musk and Trump once again, David.
Yes, the big, beautiful bill fueling ugly debate, it would seem, between President Trump and the man who was for a very long time one of his closest allies, Elon Musk. Many people would say that this 940-page piece of legislation, which introduces tax cuts and also, I suppose, directs spending towards the president's priorities like border security, comes at too high a price because it cuts health care for millions of low-income Americans. Americans, and it cuts food aid for others. But the big sticking point for many Republicans, never mind Democrats, is that concern about the national debt. Elon Musk describes this as political suicide, this bill for Republicans. He's threatening to set up an alternative political party and to challenge Republicans who support the legislation in the midterm elections next year. That's why Donald Trump is now suggesting that he would consider deporting Elon Musk, or at least asking the Department of Government Efficiency to have a closer look at the man who was for 3 months the head of the Department of Government Efficiency. It really is very finely balanced. The bill passed the House on a single vote. It passed the Senate today on the casting vote of the president, of the vice president, after a 50-50 tie. So it goes back to the House tomorrow. But I have to tell you, it's a very stormy evening in Washington. Some lawmakers are struggling to make it back here, so there's no guarantee the president's signature piece of legislation is going to cross the line.
David, we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you very much indeed, live there in Washington. Well, meanwhile, Donald Trump has been showing off his latest idea for controlling migrants, barbed wire, crocodiles and pythons. He was in Florida, where an immigration detention centre dubbed Alligator Alcatraz has been built in just days, but has attracted huge criticism and is just part of a wider crackdown on migration. Here's our US correspondent, Mark Stone.
In southern Florida, in the Everglades National Park.
Land so beautiful and so secure.
A new facility that is, for the Trump administration, a symbol of pride and a reflection of success.
It's known as Alligator Alcatraz.
A nod to the notorious island prison, but a clear indication too that for Trump, this is a prison as well.
I ran on the issue of illegals, and we have to get them out.
He toured a facility built in days with the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, and his Homeland Security chief, Kristi Noem.
When's the first person checking into the room, sir?
Tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow, within the next 24 hours.
They have the doctors, they have all the professionals.
That was the only reassurance to anyone wondering that this is, in their mind, a humane facility. The cameras were given a brief tour of the place. The beds are inside cages for people rounded up across the country, people suspected of being here illegally. The simple logistics of the place are impressive. It is essentially a holding centre with an airport attached to fly the detainees, as they're called, out of the country. The problem for critics of all this is the process.
No les abra!
Because behind the flurry of news out of this White House these past few months, something's been happening in plain sight across America. This is Ladera Heights, Los Angeles.
Don't answer any questions. You don't have to say anything. No.
26-year-old Selena Ramirez holding a tree.
What you're doing is kidnapping.
To prevent herself from being taken by masked men. They were later confirmed to be working for ICE.
Are you kidding me?
The US Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency.
Who are you? Who are you?
The married mother of a 4-year-old came to America illegally 2 years ago in search of a better life. She was taken away.
Seriously, 8 of you?
Lawyers have been trying to track her location ever since, but have not been able to find out where she was taken.
Yo, look at this! Look at this!
The examples are numerous. This is La Puente, California. A man, identity unknown, removed from his car, pulled to the ground and detained. Eyewitnesses said he did not resist the agents. 7 a.m. outside Savannah, Georgia. ICE agents and local police pull over a van they suspect is carrying undocumented people. They are detained, among them a young mother, released eventually when her visa was confirmed. She is now home with her 2 children, but her husband, he was detained and has not been seen since. In the end, there were no actual alligators on the president's photo op.
We have a lot of bodyguards and a lot of cops that are in the form of alligators. You don't have to pay them so much. But I wouldn't want to run through the Everglades for long.
Part of all this is about messaging, encouraging those here illegally to self-deport or end up here. And the Homeland Security Secretary insisted that once here, in the cages, the law will be followed.
This is unique because we can hold individuals here, they can have their hearings, get due process, and then immediately be flown back home to their home countries. And their home countries are welcoming them.
Alligator Alcatraz! We say no!
The president and his team are leaning into all this because in this polarized place, beyond the protesters, there are many who see this as the hardline but appropriate response to an immigration system that's been broken for decades. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
Well, day 2 at Wimbledon now. It's seen 2 shock defeats. Last month's French Open champion, Coco Gauff, out in the first round. Gauff was stunned by Danyana Yastremska of Ukraine in straight sets. The American second seed was one of the pre-tournament favourites. Third seed Jessica Pegula also went out, losing to straight sets to Elisabetta Cocchiaretto. Well, the men's third seed was also eliminated. Alexander Zverev lost a 4.5-hour epic against world number 72, Arthur Rinderknech. It's the Frenchman's first career victory against a top 5 player. The top seed, Yannick Sinner is through to round 2. Dan Evans awaits former world number 1 Novak Djokovic, who is leading by 2-1 against Alexandra Muller on centre court tonight. British number 1 Jack Draper was 2 sets up against Sebastian Baez when his opponent was forced to retire with an injury he'd been carrying from earlier in the match. And 22-year-old debutant Jack Pennington-Jones became the 10th British player to reach round 2 after an impressive win over Thomas Martin Etcheverry.